Hello, everybody. What a great turnout for Dead Week. I think we should call this. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the New Shore Town Council meeting. Today's Wednesday, February 19th. It is 7:02. The first item on tonight's agenda, just so people are aware, James Callahan is joining us via Zoom. How are you, James? You look like you have your ski outfit on.
Yeah, good. How are you?
First item is public comment. Anybody from the public want to comment about anything? Second matter is the consent agenda. We have some minutes, shellfish closure, lengthy document from Fish and Wildlife. Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Discuss and act on board, commission, and committee appointments. We have Ned Phillips for tree warden. Could I have a motion for Ned?
Motion to approve, Mr. Phillips.
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Transportation Safety Committee, do we have names for these, or do we need to reach out to them and ask them to please send us a name? Would you mind doing that? And then for our next meeting, we can. We have vacancies on the Commission on Motor. Yeah. No, I do not.
Car rental license holder, are we asking for a representative or?
Yeah, I would
Yes.
say for a car rental license, it's either John or Ken, presumably, right? Aren't they the only two that hold rental licenses? There's three. Is there a third?
Yeah.
Oh, right, of course.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we may have some duplicates because
Yeah, we may. yeah.
we have Marty on
Yeah.
already and he's a bike rental hold too.
I think that all the license.
Yeah.
Thank you. We still have the Commission on Motor Vehicles for Hire, Soren Water District. We did receive, Claire Costello expressed interest in the Juvenile Hearing Review Board. We can't do that tonight because it wasn't posted. All right. Item number 4, can I have a motion to open the public hearing?
So moved.
Second,
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
This is on Article 2, Section 202 definitions regarding tent, trailer, and shipping container. Just Nancy and Bill weren't here when we referred this to planning. We were there were concerns raised about the tents on the old harbor side, and lo and behold, we did not have anything governing tents in our ordinance other than you can't sleep in them. So it was the council voted to refer it to planning. Planning spent really kind of months on it. I happened to attend a few of their meetings, and thought that they really kind of they and Karen, who's here now and can answer any questions. It started off as a pretty broad ordinance, and I have a lot of appreciation for the work that they did in narrowing it down and making it a pretty straightforward, pretty slimmed down ordinance. Karen, I don't know if you want to walk us through it. That actually I think might be helpful. Thank you. Has everybody met Karen?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm Karen. I'm your land use attorney. To Keith's description, that's accurate. The council proposed an idea to the planning board to come up with something to regulate tents. And the planning board gave it a lot of thought. There was also a transition with your planner, Allison Ring, taking kind of a step in a different direction. And then we were kind of waiting for the new planner to come on. So I mean, maybe some of that caused a bit of delay. I'm not sure. But in the end, it was an effort by the board to come up with something they thought maybe is a good start, given that there wasn't anything. And the request to consider the idea was a broad one, but one worthwhile. So the ordinance that was drafted and is before you tonight includes some new definitions, one for tent, one for trailer, one for shipping container. And then looking at your section 111 general prohibitions, that was reviewed and some changes were drafted. The idea that there was an exemption for certain types of trailers was kept. There was one small change on second page at small c. 516 was a typo, so we cleaned that up to 515. That's not a substantive change. And then after that, the board felt it was important that certain types of tents for certain types of activities be clearly exempt from the prohibition. So you have a list there, A through F in yellow, and those include things like catering operations, weddings, beach and outdoor recreational activities, sporting events, church events, and farmers markets. And then after that, the board felt that it was also important to add a section to start the regulatory process. And I say start it because I think given the conversations that were had, this should be seen as kind of a living document in the sense that this is a start. It can be changed certainly by the council tonight. It can also be taken up again by the board or taken up by the council again if there are other things that come to mind or come to light that would necessitate additional changes. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Karen. Any questions from the council?
Karen, I had one question. Would this apply to all property on the island, including town property?
Yes.
Is there any provision that there can be an exemption, or if someone, is there a provision, like say someone wanted to go to zoning or whatever, to have a trailer on, to have like a container? Is there a provision for us to do that?
It would depend on the circumstances. There's actually an application for that before you tonight. There's a zoning ordinance section 112, which does give this board the power to grant special temporary permits for, say, trailers that or shipping containers, tents, things like that, that are being used for either commercial or industrial purposes. So that would be one example. There may be others depending on the situation.
And then I guess the last question I have is anything grandfathered that's currently in place?
That's a good question. Generally speaking, the zoning ordinance, when you make an amendment to your zoning ordinance, past uses or dimensional aspects of a property are grandfathered. They're considered legal existing non-conforming. It would be difficult to say if a tent under section 111 as it exists right now is prohibited today, it would also be prohibited tomorrow. So if a tent is up now and it is not in compliance with the code, it doesn't get legal existing non-conforming status because you change this tonight. Could there be a situation out there where there's a tent or something else out there? That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to see the specific example. More likely than not, I would have to say no.
So if there's no ordinance currently,
Mhm.
and there's a tent, we'll call it, or a container, whatever, and you're saying that, and this goes into place, were they in violation if there was no ordinance?
No, there's an important piece of that question, and it's this. Currently, your general prohibition section of your ordinance, there is a straight prohibition for tents. for storage of commercial or industrial activity. And also there's a straight prohibition on tents for human habitation. So those things are already not allowed. The section on regulating tents is a little different. It's more saying in certain circumstances, certain types of tents could be allowed. And so then you get past the, is it allowed or not? And then this new section at the end of the draft 519, that's the regulatory section. So that's saying, okay, we've made it clear that in certain circumstances, some types of tents are allowed. If you get past that threshold, then you have to comply with the regulatory section of 519. It's not a situation where tents are allowed now that are now going to be regulated more fully. It's more, there's a straight prohibition. And now you're carving out certain tents that are allowed and those are regulated. It's a little bit different. I'm not sure if I explained that well.
Would that also go for the shipping containers as well, the way you just explained it?
Yes, so there are, this draft does address tents, trailers, and shipping containers.
So currently now, a builder can apply for a permit for a shipping container?
A builder, yes,
Or
well,
a contractor?
there are carve-outs in the ordinance to protect builders and building trades, both for trailers and shipping containers. Yes, those are treated differently.
But that's for like construction.
Correct.
Like I have a permit to build a building, I can have a trailer on the property or whatever but I have to have the permit in order to have that.
Yes, you'd have to have some evidence that the building is under construction. So that would apply to your trades trailers if you have a person that needs to store a trailer or a shipping container on the property. For building and construction purposes, there are separate carve-outs in the ordinance already to protect that.
And what would be the difference between a canopy and a tent? So if you're covering bicycles with a, you know what I'm talking about, you can put it up or down or
Mhm.
like out in front of Diamond Blue, they have that. What's the difference between a canopy and a tent as far as definition goes?
Great question. So the way that this was constructed, the way this was drafted, tent would be the overarching umbrella of all things considered to be tents. There could be other subsections under there. I think there's a pop-up tent.
Yeah,
There's also umbrellas and canopies. Those are all discussed. So tent is kind of the overarching, but that pop-up tent that you're talking about would be included as a tent.
so that wouldn't be a canopy.
It would be included as a type of tent. A canopy would depend because this particular definition of tent excludes, I'll call them tents, canopies, something, an awning, something that is attached to a wall. So you think of a house that has awnings on the front, that is carved out. That is not a tent. So if you have any sort of pliable tent-like material and it is anchored to a wall, that has been carved out. That is not a tent.
Would it also be the same for the units that you see on the beaches with 4 posts? Those are also pop-up tents, I would guess.
So under, on the second page, where it starts tents in compliance with 519 and used for, you have beach and outdoor recreational activities. So if you're using a tent that for a beach activity, a recreational activity, that is not included.
But I have a question about that. So it says tents in compliance with section 519 and used for. So before you can set up a tent on the beach, you need to be in compliance with the section below. Is that correct? Or is that?
That's an interesting question. That was not the intent, and that may require me to take a second look. The reason why those things are listed, hold on. No, actually, it has to be in compliance with 519. The section 519 just talks about color, signage, no permitting, things like that. So if you were to have a tent on the beach for some sort of, say, retail event, or maybe some sort of, for some reason, maybe I'm just thinking of summer, alcoholic beverage event, and they put a sign on it and they use, bright polka dots and they leave it up for more than 8 days in a month, that would be a violation. But if you go to the beach and you use a pop-up tent, so long as it's not up for more than 8 days and it's not in violation of all of those things under 519, which I don't think it would be because you wouldn't otherwise need a permit. It's not an event. You're likely not putting a sign on it for 8 days. It would be fine. It would not be included and would not need to be further regulated.
So I don't know if I'm alone in having an issue with tents on the beach. But I kind of don't love the idea of permitting tents on the beach. I had a couple questions. Are you finished, Bill?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. I had a couple of questions. So in particular with this section that we were just discussing where it says tents in compliance with section 519 and used for catering events, weddings and private parties, beach or that section, right?
Mhm, mhm.
The time period would be 8 days.
Yes, if you look above that,
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so 8 days total or
So-
8 days in a row?
That was something that the planning board really struggled with in terms of putting an appropriate timeline on it. What they came up with was used for more than 8 days in a month. So that could be consecutive, that could be not consecutive, but if it's more than 8 days, together or not together, that would not be allowed.
So if you were a retailer,
Mhm.
you could put up a tent on weekends. 2 day, in other words, so Saturday, Sunday, then the next Saturday, Sunday, then the next Saturday, Sunday would be a total of 6 days.
So
Am I reading it correctly?
if we're moving off of the beach and into a
Yeah.
retail setting, yeah, so in that case, yes, you default to 111A23, which prohibits tents for commercial and industrial activity or storage or expansion of operations, et cetera, for more than 8 days in a month, except by a contractor associated with a construction job like we talked about. So yes, to your question, it would be 8 days in that month. Yes, a retailer could use it for 8 days.
So they could choose, like you said, weekends, or they could choose rainy days, or they could
4th
choose,
of July weekend or.
but what's to prevent them from calling it a recreational activity or an art festival?
I think that would be difficult, given that there would be retail sales occurring either at the tent or at the location that has the tent up, at the store or other retail use, depend on the actual owner of the tent or the use taking place under it.
Okay. So time frame, and how are we keeping track of the time frame too? Like how are we just relying on people to just follow along with that, or is there do they have to fill out some permit at town hall to say these are the 8 days this month I'd like to have a tent up on my property, or how does that work?
Yeah, so that is all very common under the ordinance. That is enforced by your zoning enforcement official. And this is not an uncommon type of thing to have in an ordinance. But you're right, it does require someone like your zoning enforcement official to be on the lookout. Also, complaints come in. Other people can file complaints to the town, and those complaints are then investigated and looked at.
Okay, so let's just say, like, I don't see it specified here, the library, right? The library wants to put up a tent to have story hour under, or, whatever. Did they fall into the 8 days a week? Or 8 days a month, sorry.
If library is something that you wanted to exempt, like catering or church events, you could do that by adding it to that section at the top of page 2.
But the answer is yes, that they would fall under that 8 days.
8 days a month.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, they would, unless
Okay.
you exempt them.
Okay, so I want to go back to, I had a note about catering operations.
Mhm.
Could that be expanded to, I'm assuming we mean catering operations during an ongoing licensed event. right?
Yes,
So this wouldn't be like an outdoor seating area at a restaurant that just has a permanent tent over it.
correct. It would, if you had an outdoor seating area for that type of restaurant use and it was up more than 8 days, it would have to comply with 519.
So is there, would we want to specify that or we're just gonna interpret it?
It's up to you. The council has free reign to adjust this ordinance as you see fit. If you are reading it and interpreting in a way that gives you pause, you can make changes to do that. And that's a reasonable change if that's something you want to do.
Would you just describe it to me again? I'm looking at Molly because
So I'm saying like, you know, if I have a restaurant and
Yeah.
I have a tent up at my restaurant and I am just using that as extra covered seating area outdoor all summer, does that qualify as the exemption or,
No.
because it says catering operations?
Yeah, I think, I mean, and we should clarify it if you want to, I'm not, the way that I read it.
Expansion of operations, I
Yeah.
think is what.
If you are,
Kicker
if
there.
you are, if you are engaged
oughta
in
change
catering,
that.
if you are, Kimberly and you're doing a wedding, you can put up your, catering operation tent. That's.
Next to your wedding tent, right?
But if you are Kimberly's restaurant and you decide you're gonna increase your square footage by putting a tent in the parking lot adjacent to your front door, the most you could do that would be 8 days a month.
8 days a month. Is that how you're interpreting that? Okay. I
Correct.
just wanted to clarify that. I had a note about that.
But right now, as I understand, and this is an important distinction, as I understand the lack of ordinance now, you could theoretically put a tent outside your restaurant and serve people.
I would argue no,
Okay.
but this ordinance that's before you will make it even more clear.
Gotcha.
So I'm thinking, Captain Nix has an awning attached to the building that they pull out. If I had a restaurant and I wanted to have that option, it would have to be an awning like that. If I had area I wanted to cover,
It was an awning over a deck.
awning over a deck, yes.
So they have a deck that exists. It's usually exposed. And then maybe for inclement weather or too much sun, they pull the awning out.
Right.
It's attached to the building.
Yeah, if it's attached, that's a great point. Yeah, if it's attached to the building, no, it wouldn't be considered a tent. But if it was something that was erected with poles on the deck, that was more stationary, couldn't be pulled in and out, that would be a tent. That would be prohibited.
I'm just trying to think of real examples so that we
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
like ruin, like.
Yes.
I'm thinking at the
Or
deck
people-
of the kittens, they put up that awning all summer that's attached to the side of the building over a deck with framework.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm just trying to picture it, right? I'm not.
Yeah, that to me is an awning. That's
So is that
Right.
an awning or is that a tent?
That is an awning by the draft definition because it is attached to a building.
Okay.
Might be drifting here a little bit, but so if it was attached to a fence, not the building, but part of the overall structure or whatever, is that an awning or is it a tent? It would be on the, say, the fence post.
Trying to imagine that. So you're thinking a
don't- there's a few of
fence
those.
and they're using the
The
fence, the two posts as almost like the wall of a building.
Just, you would attach awning, tent, covering to one of the fence posts.
So the key language there in the draft tent definition is which is supported by an existing structure. And under your zoning ordinance, a fence is a structure.
Okay,
So to your question, that would be the same as attaching it to a building.
fence is part of the structure. Okay, thanks.
Can I ask another question, Molly? Are you?
Yeah, go ahead.
who came up with the 8 days? Is there some rationale for why it's 8 days in a month and not 10 days in a month or 15 days in a month?
Yes and no. It was something that was discussed at great length. That was the number that the board came up with. I don't recall anyone having a strong rationale or tie to it other than the planning board, I believe, just wanted it to be reasonable and to allow some tents for commercial activity on a limited basis.
And my one other question was, I was trying to figure when Molly was talking about the beach activities, the canopies that you see all over the beaches. It would not be considered a tent, so they wouldn't have to comply with the 519 neutral color blending in with the surrounding environment.
So the way that I read it, they would. So what tents for beach activity are exempt from the general prohibition, provided they are in compliance with 519.
Right, and 519 says they must be a neutral color to blend in with the surrounding environment.
Can I
It
ask,
does.
how would we draft a beach tent exemption from the color thing? Because I'm not trying to stop people from putting it, but we know what we're doing here, right? I don't really.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think we probably had one, and I didn't feel like I was breaking the law. Trying to keep our kids out of the sun.
And unless it
Probably
was,
a really ugly.
I was
color.
gonna say, if it wasn't sand, if it wasn't blending in.
So,
Yeah, that's actually an easy fix. What we could do is, so that list A through F, where you see C, beach or outdoor recreational activities,
yeah,
we won't add anything. But to all of the others, unless there's something else that you would also like to exempt from those requirements, we could add in compliance with 519. The only thing that I hesitate on with this is if someone is having an outdoor recreational activity of a type that requires some sort of other permit. Section 519 does speak to permits and says that you cannot put a tent up or use it until there is a permit in place. So I get you don't want to restrict families from going to the beach with their pop-up tent, but there could be bigger types of activities, bigger groups, bigger
Can we-
events at the beach that would be then using tents because there's an exemption.
can we put a semicolon after activities and C? And say, notwithstanding the line above, beach tents are not required to conform to subsection 519A1.
Yes, we could do that.
Does that?
We could.
That's one way to do it.
yeah,
That was not I'm trying to make sure we're appropriately carving out beach tents. That's.
And I'm wondering, it almost applies to other things too. I mean, are we concerned that sporting events and tournaments and catering operations, and church events and art shows all have to be neutral color to blend in with? I mean, I don't know. I'm asking what everyone else feels like. That just seems.
And you know, it's interesting about the neutral color. When that came up, I kind of raised an eyebrow as a land use attorney thinking, can we actually regulate color? And what I found was you actually do regulate color in a very similar way. That neutral color language comes up. I think it is as to maybe trades trailers or trailers. So it is in there for that type of use. And I think that's why we thought, well, we would carry it in. I'm interested going back to the beach activities and maybe sporting events. It sounds like the intent is to have a carve out for personal use. So
would
we,
say that's-
we could do it that way.
We could do it that way, and then if there's a problem, we can always change it, but at least for the personal use on the beach, you don't have to. get a beach tent.
Yeah, I remember being at a planning board and the beach tents were an area of focus. There was concern similar to one. I actually think Molly and I may differ here. Because I tend to agree that, I don't want to fool with people coming out with their family and putting up a beach tent.
However, I guess where my thing is,
Yeah.
isn't in opposition at all to you, but what I'm thinking is, perhaps we should just pull beach out. I'm thinking, I don't want to end up where people are setting up a beach tent and leaving it overnight,
Right,
right? So we want to,
right.
beach
agree.
tents, that's your tent that you show up with, like Keith said, with your kids, you pop it up, keep everybody in the shade. But it's not something you set up the night before so you can stake out your place.
Mhm.
Like, and I don't think we want to create a situation. We don't have that problem currently. However, it is something they legislate a lot, like in the Outer Banks and
Mhm.
places like that. So
People
maybe
do
we
come
just deal,
before sunrise,
maybe we
so-
just deal with that, and say,
You and I
it's
have been
exempt,
there.
this is exempt from the 8 days, like you can't set up your tent for 8 days on the beach, no matter what color it is.
Mhm.
So, does that sound crazy? I don't know.
No, I think I know where you're going. And I think Karen, and we don't have to draft on the fly. This is, a couple of things. One option is you exempt, personal use, activities, you know. Another option is, what Molly described, which is, that the beach, particularly the beach, is not intended for someone to sort of get an 8-day exemption. You know what I mean? It's like you're not gonna leave it up from 6:30 when you leave the beach until the next day.
Right.
Though I could imagine a circumstance where if you go into any of these, gosh darned, I'll use gosh darned, like soccer tournaments, lacrosse tournaments, God knows I went to enough of those. They have people leave their tents up for the weekend. The teams have tents. So I could imagine a circumstance where it's a recreational activity or a sporting event or tournament where, yeah, I mean, you leave your tent up for a few days.
You mean like at Heinz Field?
Yeah. Yeah.
But then the recreation department would apply for that, right?
Yes, if it's a recreational activity, it would be excluded so long as it complies with the 519.
So I thought of another one though that we should address just is the yoga, right? Yoga at the farm is under a tent. So what does that fall into this exemption area? Or is that an 8-day?
Yoga at the farm.
Yeah, so there's yoga up at the 1661 farm under a tent.
Is this a once in a while thing? Is it more, would it trip the
Summertime.
once at 8 days? Yeah, I mean, a tent that's up for more than 8 days especially for commercial activity, would be subject to the ordinance, and there is no exemption in A through F that I see that it would be exempt.
Okay.
Outdoor recreational activity.
That'd be the same thing for the,
I see what you're saying. My concern is that if it is for a yoga studio, I think it crosses the line more away from a recreational activity and more towards our retail sales activity.
So it sounds like we're gonna make changes.
Yes.
Right, so then would we have a second hearing on this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll continue.
I just
it
feel
to
like if we're,
Dave's
if we're realizing there are issues, we should let these people know that there are some issues and get their input on it. I don't want to make decisions that affect people's livelihood without them
I
having.
think you're right on it. There's a lot of other businesses that we haven't touched on, and I don't think we should say what businesses those are,
Mhm.
but there's quite a few that we've missed. that are-
Well, and I think, no, I'm not gonna like read Bill's mind down there, but I think a lot of your questions really pertain to the fire department too. The fire department has a large tent-ish
Yeah.
structure, and a lot of shipping containers, that we would have to address. That would put us in non-compliance.
No, it would not.
You don't believe so?
No, under section 111, shipping containers and tents for commercial and industrial activity are prohibited. Town use is not commercial or industrial.
I had just asked if it,
But yeah,
if it pertained to all properties and town properties, you had said yes.
For flipped. If I misunderstood the question, I apologize. I think I was thinking of it more flipped. So if you look at section 111, commercial and industrial activity is a use for those uses, but it still applies to all property. Does that probably doesn't clear that up, but judging by the look. The town property is still subject to the ordinance, but the use would not be commercial or industrial. So it does apply to all property, but there's no way the town would be engaging in a commercial or industrial activity.
I have a problem passing an ordinance doesn't that's not gonna apply to the town also. I think it's about visual. You have other property owners around there, and for the town not to follow the same standards.
No. It does apply to the town, but because what is strictly prohibited is commercial or industrial activity, there is no way for the town of New Shoreham to be engaging in commercial or industrial activity. They'd be engaging in a municipal activity under the use type code. So this would apply to all property, but this specific prohibition
As it does now.
exists currently is only saying you cannot have tent storage containers, trailers for commercial and industrial activity.
So the town properties become exempt.
Town properties, municipal uses are generally treated differently in every city and town as opposed to another retail, industrial, commercial activity. Yes.
But
So
isn't it storage? I mean, if it's used to garage a piece of equipment, isn't it storage space or storage on the property? Wouldn't that?
Yes, the way that the ordinance is written now is it's commercial or industrial activities, storage, except by a contractor. This would change that. So it would say for any commercial industrial activity, storage or expansion of operations, floor space. Yeah, and that is a great pickup because if that is not clarified, it would be any storage.
Yeah.
So that's the question for the council. You want to consider, do you want to say that any storage, I know that there is a storage container at the town, I want to say it's either the electric tower, and that is being used for municipal storage. It is not being used for commercial or industrial activity.
Did they get a count on the storage containers when they were reviewing this by any chance?
I don't know.
You know,
So now we know why there was never a definition for tents in the ordinance.
Yes. Always difficult to come up with a new regulatory section of an existing ordinance for a use that was otherwise prohibited.
Can I have a motion to continue this hearing?
So moved.
Yeah, can I ask just one more question before we do that?
Yep.
Okay, just about the neutral colors.
Mhm.
Think maybe we could be clearer about what we're considering to be a neutral color. I think I know what I think the neutral color is.
Before we go any further, if, just so you know, if we do that, you'll have, that will trip a change in the other, which is fine. It will trip a change in the other section.
Okay.
So if
Leave
we,
it alone for now.
I
And
I would say,
Okay.
and again, my legal advice is when you are trying to accomplish this task, which is a reasonable task, my advice would be to try to think of this amendment as a step in the right direction, knowing that there are going to be additional steps you're going to have to take. I don't think you want to try to hit the home run and cover everything. You're never going to be, that is the beauty of zoning. You are never going to be able to contemplate what new kind of tent is coming down the road. Who knows what could happen. So
That's why Bill's first question is a really important one on grandfather.
Right. That's what I was
yes,
gonna ask again, because you know that's gonna come down. I think we need to get that clarified, our position at least, and then we can go from there with it.
So
yes. so go
mid-March
ahead and Continue.
meeting, I've forgotten what the date is.
The 19th.
March 19th. You moved second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed, no. Thank
just so I am clear, what is my charge so that I can come back to
Wait
you
to
with
hear-
useful information?
you. Wait to hear from us.
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you.
And I mean, this might be something that would be helpful to have a piece in the newspaper if the newspaper isn't covering it, to give people a heads up as to what's out there. As Molly said, you know, there may, and Tristan said, there may be other things.
And I mean, it is advertised as a legal
On the public.
ad,
it's in the-
but it's not, there's not maybe an article about it.
Yeah, I'm talking about an article because I don't think people actually read some of those legal ads.
All right, set a public hearing date for hazard mitigation and flood management plan. What's the date, Millie?
April 7th.
Can I have a motion to set this public hearing for April 7th on the hazard mitigation? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. That's been a very interesting process, by the way, if you haven't attended any of those meetings. It's pretty interesting. Item 6, continued item, discuss and act on request of VVO Real Estate Holding for a 6-month extension of a temporary permit under section 112, the aforementioned section 112 of the zoning ordinance for the Harborside property. Hey, Josh, how are you?
Hi, good evening, everybody. Good to see you again. Just for the record, Josh Parks on behalf of VVO Real Estate. So you have my letter. We're seeking a 6-month extension of the section 112 storage permit that was granted for the Harborside lot. That's Plat 6, lot 107. The permit expires at the end of this month, I think the 25th. So we're seeking to extend that same permit, you know, with the same conditions that are currently in place. I can share some what I hope the council will think is good news. The project received the certificate of appropriateness from the HDC on January 10th. The engineer then went out and finished the bid drawings. So engineering drawings have gone out to contractors for bid. That's happening now. Pricing's being collected, and the goal is to be breaking ground this spring. So, you know, frankly, hopefully we don't even need all 6 months, but I'm asking for that here because, you know, the vagaries of weather and construction being what they are, we just don't know what the groundbreaking date will be at this point.
Any comment from the council? Questions? My question is, what's it going to look like? Because for me, what I thought we were approving with the fence design, et cetera, is not what's there now. And it's not when the fences were blown all over the place, literally for weeks. To me, these requests for special treatment carry with them fundamental give and take, where from my perspective, speaking only for myself, I do not feel like that site has been anything like what it was described that it was going to be. The fences, if anything, look worse. And that would have been hard to accomplish. So for me, unless we have a plan that that the applicant is stipulated to, that is enforceable on some basis, I'm not inclined to extend.
Sure. So I appreciate that. All I can say is we received that approval by letter. The date escapes me that set forth the conditions. My understanding was those conditions were complied with. This is the first I've heard of, dissatisfaction from at least your perspective regarding what that looks like. So I'll confess to being a little bit on the back foot about addressing specifics of that. All I can frankly say is I can certainly commit to you that we'll work to have the property looking in a kempt manner.
Again, we were given photographs when we decided to grant the extension or to grant the permission initially. What went up, quite frankly, never looked anything like what we were given photographs of.
We're taking photographs of.
Yeah, I can share with you all the photographs that I took 1 week when it was essentially blown down and no one took care of it. So for me, again, just for me, without a very specific plan around what it's going to look like when the extension kicks in, I would not vote for an extension.
Understood.
And I'm open to that.
Sure.
I always have been. I mean, and my frustration with this, quite frankly, has been that I feel open to it and I feel like it never quite meets what I thought it was going to be. So please, come with something.
Can I just ask, I mean, if we don't grant it, what's the alternative? I mean, what's it gonna look like then? I mean, oh,
So legally, what would happen is the 6-month period would end on February 25th. And at that point, if the storage containers, tents, and violating items are not removed from the property would be out of compliance with the zoning ordinance, which could result in a notice of violation.
right, so then it would take some time to go through the whole process. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I would, I would say you've issued the warning, have them do it. But we're a lot better off if we just get some movement rather than winding up having a hearing
gotta be
with
honest
the
with you.
zoning board and in court.
This notion that we're better off, I think I just fundamentally disagree with. We're better off saying yes and hoping that there will be compliance. I'm sorry, but that's not where I am.
One important point that might help is that the way the ordinance is written, the 6 months is really the maximum, meaning there's language that says that the amount of time that should be given is like reasonably feasible up to 6 months. So you could grant, if you wanted to, additional time, not 6 months. You could do less.
Like a month or a
So
couple of weeks or something to
you
get
could.
some.
Or what if we were to extend until March 19th when we have the hearing on the tent ordinance? Would that make sense? Because then,
No,
no.
I would not advise that.
Okay.
This special permit is very specific to this instance, and if you were to continue it, there's no mechanism for the permit not to expire on the 25th. So that would leave the applicant kind of in this gray area of being out of compliance, but having a hearing set.
So let me ask you, the recommendation for the fence, that came from the planning board, zoning board? Where did that come from? Did that come from
It came
us?
from us when we were, we had, correct me, why don't you talk about the sequence, Karen, just so that you don't have to interrupt me and Tell me I'm wrong.
My best recollection, and I'm sure Attorney Parks will jump in if I'm wrong on this first part, but the initial request for the special permit did agree in concept to some sort of screening. There were discussions with my office and Mr. Parks' office to come up with something that might work to present. The idea of fencing was presented, photographs were presented,
Right.
and then there was discussion about what that would look like, the heights, where to put some
Yes.
gates.
Yes.
That was decided by the council, and then as a part of the approval was conditioned on that fencing as discussed at the meeting.
So I just want to say that I would agree with Keith that that meeting that we had where the fencing was discussed at length. What is up now? And I'd just be curious, like, what do you think you see when you come off the ferry? How do you think that fence looks?
I haven't come off the ferry.
Okay.
Since it
Well,
went up.
You know, I suggest that you check it out. And I'm not sure what the owner thinks. And I'm also, I am just going to say, for me, someone who lives here 12 months out of the year, the fence should look pretty terrific 12 months out of the year, not just when the owner is here or just when they think it should look great. These pictures I took several days ago, it was all flopped over on the ground. There were gas tanks blown out into the street. It's right downtown, super unkempt looking, like not what we agreed to. Like, so I also am of the mind that, like, when you're asking for this exemption and we had this agreement, you sort of have to be in compliance with your agreement for me to say, yes, let's keep going. Like, what you're going to see when you go down there and look at it is this plastic fencing that looks like gap teeth with little wooden braces holding it in between, you know, sort of holding it up in between.
Again, I'm open to it, but I really would like a plan with photographs and
Sure, and I hope I don't give the impression I'm arguing with you on this.
No,
I want to,
no,
we're
not at all,
we're
Josh.
we're here now, and I don't want to get stuck in sort of a feedback loop of, okay, well, you tell me, well,
No,
what
no,
are we
no,
doing?
no.
So I thought we had worked out in the fall sort of what all the parties were happy with the fence looking like. And I'm hearing now for the first time that at least two members of the council do not think that the fence looked like what was presented back then. And
I did send a photograph back to the lawyer, to the group about a month ago. So you guys should have had like a little heads up that I wasn't pleased with it.
news to
So-
me, but okay. I mean, at this point, we're here, and I'm
Yeah.
kind of interested in moving it
Yeah.
forward.
I'm much more interested in solving the problem than I am in giving people a hard time.
Yep. I mean, I'm happy to try and get the fence to look like what was sent in the photos, which were the basis of our agreement. Above and beyond that, I'm just frankly not equipped to redesign things on the fly here.
Well,
I have just one question.
yeah.
Was it screening or did we ask for a fence?
The initial discussion had to do with screening. There were several types of screening. Thanks, Millie.
Was that a requirement to have a fence or was it to have screening? I don't remember.
The requirement from the council was fence.
Fence.
The initial discussion started with screening. So there were many different ideas that were kicked around, and the parties and the council all landed on a fence.
Yeah, okay. It's hard to dress up the chain link fence. Keep this moving here. Natural disasters had the fire. They're working with the plan and the council, or rather the zoning board, to get this plan underway. So my motion is to approve the extension and also ask that the owner address the fence blowing around town and off of that, his property onto other property.
Is there a second?
Certainly.
I'll second that.
Oh, Siri.
So, Josh, one thing, not to throw this in the last minute, but I think what happens when you come off the boat, you see you see whatever is there now. you don't realize that it's, it's a to-be construction site or whatever. If there was some way, there was some type of a sign, banner or whatever's on it that said, pardon our appearance, coming soon, maybe a drawing of the, what do you call it? On, like I said, on the screening part would be, to me, would look a lot nicer than what it looks like right now.
I think, as I say, I'm open to this,
Mhm.
but I sort of don't want to I don't want to be hopeful that it's going to look better. So, I mean, I would support a motion to extend it for a month to give the owners time to come back to us with a plan and renderings or a photograph. Doesn't have to be fancy. It just has to look clean.
Mhm.
And I mean, my own preference would be as neutral as possible. I feel like there was, in a way, sort of that exactly as you described, there was almost an opportunity missed there. So that's, I mean, that's where I would be. I'm not, hell no, I won't go, but I'm definitely in a show me and prove it to me.
Can I ask a question?
I think we had a plan that we approved. What is up is not what we approved. It's some broken down, janky, weird approximation of what we approved that I'm not okay with. Like, it's downtown, it's historic district, it's our downtown, it's where we live, it should comply with the plan. But I would be perfectly okay with extending it for a month or two with the expectation that we would have that and then we could extend it further. But
Can I just ask Karen a question? Because I had some idea that you could only extend once under that ordinance, so that we're going to run into trouble if we,
So the language says,
I have it here if you want me to read it.
I got it. That upon, however, provided however, that upon similar application, one additional period of 6 months may be allowed. So you could read that to mean one additional period, 6 months, split up into,
split
in
up.
total, split up to, 2 periods of, or 3 periods of 2 months, 6 1-month periods. I think you could read it that way.
Okay, good. I just didn't want to get ourselves caught with,
so if we were to approve Karen for a month or 2 months, we could then approve for 4 or 5, depending on which we.
As long as the total doesn't go beyond 6.
Beyond
six months.
But what you'd want them to come back
Yeah.
next month with,
Yeah,
show us what you're gonna put up. It'll be,
We already approved it. We already approved this conceptual plan of what it was supposed to be. Any
okay,
of us who've been down
I don't know what
to
that is.
It's not what it looks like.
Okay,
Just do what you said you were gonna do. And then I'm good. That's what's there is not what they said they were going to do.
I don't know what they said they were gonna do. I was.
yeah, that was before us.
Yeah,
so.
so that's, I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm telling you, I don't know.
I still think there's value in
Thank
the
you.
conversation, so come back to, I mean, my inclination would be to say, come back to us in a month and show us what it's gonna look like.
I just, in fairness, I believe those photos were of the actual panels.
Yeah.
There was, agreement to kind of modify the fence for additional height on the front, on the Water Street frontage. So those pictures don't show that additional
There was the
paneling, however that is to be made up.
There was the additional conversation during that meeting of the screening between Oddfellows and the lot too. And I don't think that ever really happened.
Molly, was it ever, in the beginning, did it look like those photos?
I don't recall it ever looking.
No.
I mean,
No,
I have photos
okay.
from a couple months ago.
Nancy, would you pass that to me, please?
Oh, sure, sorry.
mean, obviously after they put it up, it started falling down because I'm gonna assume it wasn't put up correctly, but that, I'm not a builder, so. Because then they started like, putting it
I
back
think,
together
I think we're
awkwardly.
seeing some of the operational challenges, frankly, with putting up, fencing against steel containers. I know that you have to put strapping or something to hold it up, to hold the wood up. There are weather challenges that exist, particularly out on block this time of year. So, it's a challenging structure to build, to screen. Again, I'm, happy to commit to making it look as good as it can. And, to remind the council that we're here on, what's hopefully a very temporary basis so we can get this hotel built.
But I don't think that we agreed to having it look as good as it can. I think we agreed to the plan that we approved. And I think we're already dealing with their problem. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to sound like a jerk, like, don't make your problem my problem, but I kind of feel like, don't make your problem my problem. Like, this is what you said you were gonna do, just do it. It's not that, can't be that hard.
I can appreciate your frustration, Molly, but I'm almost more concerned with what the site's going to look like when they're building, because that's going to be a challenge. And when that will be starting. So, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that we got some fairly good news today that the bids are going out and there's going to be a building going up at some point. That's going to be our next issue.
Right, but that's a tomorrow problem and this is a today problem.
I would also say that at least when it's under construction, it'll be apparent that something is being built there as opposed to what it looks like now.
Well, I think Bill's idea isn't so bad to, put some sort of a visual up there. I think, and then when it first happened, most people who came off the boat were pretty much aware of what had happened on that site.
Therefore,
know.
I would extend for a month and have them come back and say, here's what it's going to look like.
Or what would be better if we extend it for a month. If we happen to go by there and it looks like that, it won't be an issue.
Right? Yeah.
But I don't want to police this, do you? Can't they just come back in a month with it done and then we go forward?
I mean, what you're saying is it's supposed to look like that right now, and it doesn't.
So here's my concern about that, Molly. We're going to get into another discussion potentially around whether they did what they said they were going to do, as opposed to, okay, here's what it's going to look like. And I tend to prefer that. Tell us what it's going to look like. It's going to have a banner on the front.
Right.
You're gonna park a crane out there and say, pardon our, but here, this crane's going to be working in 3 months. God bless, I mean, I'm open to all of it. It just, there was a real failure to execute here, as you can tell from my perspective, and I just would like it to be executed. That's my opinion.
No, I agree.
Motion has been made and seconded to extend it for 6 months.
I'll withdraw my second if you,
All right, so I can withdraw my motion and the motion would be made to, for 1 month and then have the property owner submit a new plan for the extension after that.
I'll second that.
All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
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 Opposed, no? The ayes have it. Thank you, Josh. Sorry you got the shrapnel.
I'm used to it. See you shortly.
It was good to see you, man. I like the
wanted to come back.
Blundstones too. You're fitting in. Beautiful. All right. Discuss and act on recommendations from the Harbors Committee. Kate, come aboard. Yeah, Josh, would you mind staying?
Thank you, Karen.
So Kate, we have 3 increases here. The nightly transient and private mooring rental fee from 55 to 65 per boat per night. You want to just walk us through them? How do you want to do this?
Well, the Harbors Committee came up with these changes in the fee schedule. The last time that the fees were increased, I believe, was 2021,
Right.
with the understanding, with my understanding that we would be working towards a Harbors facility.
Okay. So do you support this increase?
I don't support the daily rate increase.
So you.
I support the private mooring rental fee from 55 to 65 a night and the Old Harbor dockage to 450.
Do you know where we fall in terms of our, I don't know, what's similar?
65 to 85 is comparable.
I see. So we'd be at the low end still?
We're still at the low end.
Interesting.
And when you say you don't agree with the dinghy, is that number 2? Is that the rental?
The-
What is that?
The daily rate, so they would get their 10, they have to be off the mooring by 6 PM.
Oh, okay.
People come over for the day from the main.
Go have lunch.
And these are all just the town moorings?
This is
And when
just
you
the
s-
town moorings. The town moorings and the private moorings would be the same increase. The private moorings have to be the same rate if we rent them out as the town moorings, as in the harbors, harbor management plan.
Okay, wait, so, the nightly transient and private mooring rental fee, so transient is one thing, private is the other, is it, or,
They're one in the same.
so the
It's
town.
the same
mooring-
rental fee
And if I,
per
have a-
night,
if I have a mooring that you're renting for me, a private mooring,
per night.
okay,
If I recall correctly, what we call town moorings, the harbor management plan term for them is nightly transient.
okay. And then the daily rate is someone who's using a
A-
mooring, but just for the day, not staying over.
Correct.
Okay.
I don't know whether you can, well, actually, we'll all wait till we get to B.
What's your occupancy rate on the moorings nightly?
We're full from the end of June to the last week of August. That's
So-
including 30 to 45 private moorings a night.
And so your reluctance to raise the price really has to do with like showers and,
Yes,
okay.
showers and facilities for our boaters.
So just, do you find that most people, when they come here, that they know kind of what they're getting into?
I think we still have a mix of new people coming here and the people that have been coming since we had moorings in, since they've been able to anchor in the pond. So
So in the daily rate, which is up to 6 hours, that would cost you $40, but you could go overnight for 65? That seems pretty steep.
I think it's extreme.
Yeah.
I don't support that.
So it's the daily rate that you're not interested in raising?
No, if we went to 65, again, I think it's comparable to other communities. You got Newport, you got Bristol, Jamestown.
You're just saying the short stay is the one you think is.
I think it's excessive, especially
Yeah,
if you're
okay.
you're here for a couple of hours, whether
Yeah.
it's 6 hours or 3 hours. That's a bit much.
That feedback is what we rely on you for.
And so if I'm on that mooring for the day and then I sail out at 5 o'clock, that mooring's not going to stay open all night. Somebody's going to latch on to that, right?
Correct.
And you're going to charge them $65.
We would be able to rent that out again.
Okay. So it's the day rate that you're not really interested in raising. I just want to clarify.
I'm personally not interested in
Okay.
raising that.
Okay.
And the Old Harbor dockage is within the market, 450 a foot.
We're still extremely low. That was not raised in 2021.
Right, that's right, I remember.
So,
that. Yeah.
Paynes is the next private marina and they're at $6 a foot. So
Other question, does anybody want to make a motion on little I and three little I's? I and I.
I'll make a motion for I double I.
But not double I, just I and
Oh,
triple I.
that's right, she didn't want it. Okay, correction, so that would be I and triple I.
Is there a second? I'll second it.
Second.
what does that mean?
It means
Stays the
increase
same.
the nightly transient and private mooring rental fee from 55 to 65 per boat per night. And increase the Old Harbor dockage from $4 to $4.50 per foot, but not touch the New Harbor rental daily rate.
Okay.
Is that clear to
Staying
everybody
the
on
third.
the?
Yes.
On the
Mhm.
council? Yeah. So we have a motion made and seconded. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
I,
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. B, landing fee increase. I don't think we can do this without a statutory change.
That's what I told them.
Oh, okay. Kate,
I
thank you.
still wanted to
Kate,
talk
thank-
about it.
Thank you for coming.
but Pat did bring that up and Patrick Evans at our meeting last week, right? And that is sort of on our list of
Yes.
things to address.
Right.
And it's on number,
So-
it comes under number 10 tonight too.
Mhm.
So there's not going to be any
I-
movement on that.
It wouldn't matter.
There's no need to.
No. I mean, we're gonna, I think there's some consensus to work on the landing fee with the legislature, but we don't have the statutory authority to just sort of do it ourselves. That's my understanding.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure whether Amy was saying, what are you talking about?
I guess just for clarification in this context, or do we want to wait and talk about the legislative agendas separately and have this conversation over there? Or-
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Kate. You're fantastic as always. Item 8. We will be talking about landing fee during our discussion of the legislative update. And you are welcome. You are always welcome to stay. Thank you. Number 8, discuss and act on recommendations from the Commission on Motor Vehicles for Hire for rating.
I'm gonna have to recuse
Okay,
myself.
cool. Molly's recused. Anybody else recused? All right, Nancy, you get A.
I have heard some real horror stories as to, yeah. I don't personally have any objection to raising the bodily fluid charge from $50 to $150. And I won't ask for definitions precisely of what bodily fluids. I'll make a
Bill?
motion to do that. Want to do each one, or do you want to do
Let's
it?
see if we can wrap it up.
Okay.
My objection here is to D. I do not like the idea of, if I understand it correctly, are we lowering the age for a kid from 6 years to 4 years?
And it's kind of silly, not like
Yeah, use the mic. Sorry, Sue Ann.
It kind of goes like New England Airlines and the other airlines, they charge from 2 up. Nantucket charges from 0 up. And we're talking about, I think, $3. Yeah, $3 per person. Interstate's 5, maybe? Yeah.
Fair.
And I don't know what their child fare is, but I mean, this is just $3.
Also, I looked online and I tried to find out general rules in the state of Rhode Island.
Gotta come up to the mic, sorry.
General rules in the state, and I couldn't find anything of anybody charging or having, there's no free rides that I could find. So then I went to the information at New England Airlines and they don't charge 2 and under. Interstate also, they charge a child rate from 5 to 12 years old, but below that, it's free. They take a seat and they're in the car and that seat needs to be paid for. And 4 years, if they're 4 years old and they can sit on your lap, then they don't have to pay. But, you know, they're taking up seats in the car, sometimes even an infant. Right. And then I also looked at that information with the state, and I'm not sure if I understood it correctly, but it seemed like taxis were exempt from certain things, but I'm not quite sure how it reads. But the actual car seat is not required in a taxi, as far as I could read. I don't know.
So I don't have any problem with the bodily fluid charge. God bless you. You could make it 1,500 as far as I'm concerned.
I think it's 175 in Nantucket.
I have no problem with the tour rate because people can make their own decision about whether they want to go on a tour or not. And if the $10 breaks them, that's frankly their business.
As far as that one goes, it's been in my experience that if somebody's getting in for a tour, it's an hour, sometimes a little bit more, which is an hour rate. So one is 90 and one is 100. It just didn't seem, they should both be the same as far as I'm concerned. But
so I have no problem with those two. Just me. I still struggle with a bit with the 6 years and 4-year-old thing. Explain to me how the per person charge works again, Sue Ann, please.
Basically, it starts at 11 for one, and then each person over the age of 4, if it goes through, is $2, and we would like to change it to $3, and that's just a general, the easiest way to get a general increase for everything that's going on: insurance, maintenance, replacing our vehicles, gasoline. And $3 is what Nantucket gets $3, just as an example. It just seems an easier way to just,
Do you have any thoughts on
you know, not do so.
I just don't like to be associated with Nantucket.
I know.
You're the ghost of Martha Ball over there.
Not that I've ever been there.
Bill, any thoughts?
Yeah, no, I agree with you, Keith. I think you're making it up on going from $2 to $3 on the extra person charge. I'd like to see, at least for this phase, keep it what it currently is for the minimum age, and I'm fine with the other 3.
Can I have a
A, B,
motion
and
to
C.
approve A, B, and C? Is that right? That's where you are.
Yep. Second.
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 All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? No. The ayes have it.
Thank you.
We're not going to pick on the babies.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. I gotta get this, guys. Where'd Molly go? Sue Ann, will you tell Molly to come
Yeah,
back in when
yeah.
you go out? Water. Water. So this is on the water resolution. Do you want to talk us through this, Amy?
Sure. And both Brad Martins, the chair, John Bruniger are away.
Yeah.
So they extend their apologies for not being here. But this comes out of a legislative change, I think in 2022, where there were a number of lawsuits, or there were lawsuits in Jamestown about whether there's an implied obligation for a water company to provide service to the entirety of its community as opposed to just their defined district. And so Jamestown has submitted legislation clarifying that and carving out and making it clear that they are obligated to provide water to those within their district. The New Shoreham Water Company is looking for similar language and would like, through resolution of the town council and their own resolution, which they've already passed, to pursue similar legislation to clarify that their obligation is to provide water to the New Shoreham Water District only.
Amy, would you mind, not to put you on the spot, but I really thought the example that you or Brad or somebody gave me about what happened in Jamestown is a worthwhile anecdote to help people understand why this is important.
So that would have been Brad, which makes it difficult for me to repeat.
Yes.
I'm going to see if James can step in.
And it was in the Providence Journal at one point.
It's widely
the whole
reported,
story.
but I don't have enough of the facts at my fingertips
So
to
here's my recollection.
reiterate. But
Guy builds a house clearly outside the water district. It's a fancy house. He has a lot of dough. He says, I want water. They say, the water district says, you're not in the district. The guy, Daddy Warbuck, says, too bad. We're going to sue you because we believe that you have an obligation to serve us. And it ends up being sort of who's got the most resources and will to fight something like that. So theoretically, somebody on, I don't know, West Side Road could build a house and pursue the same strategy and tie the water district up in litigation around their obligation to serve. So this would be a clarification. That's the fair bare bones of it.
That's correct.
Okay.
Can I have a motion to approve this resolution? Is there a second? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Receive and discuss legislative update. Amy?
sure. And the landscape on this is obviously moving quite a bit.
Yeah.
So just briefly, housing, I don't have any specific updates except that May 4th, Rick and Jeff are working with the Housing Board, both keeping track of legislation that's being proposed and also trying to keep an eye on any opportunities to create the carve-outs that the Housing Board's been talking about along the way. So nothing specific there yet.
Do you know, Amy, whether they're looking at this notion? It's a great idea because I thought of it. Of sort of a, we all, every person who pays taxes kicks into the bond funding that we all approved in November. And it seems to me that there ought to be at least some manner of floor for smaller towns who are struggling, who are, by the way, inclined to do as much affordable housing as they can, but who are struggling with the capital side of it, to either by statute or by declaration make a commitment to the smaller towns, I think would be really helpful.
I've certainly seen the idea floated around.
Yeah.
I don't know that it's part of anything that's been specifically introduced yet.
Uh-huh.
But we can, one, keep an eye on it, and two, report back more
Great.
specifically on that.
And was there something, did I read that there was somewhere a proposal about, the recording fees, and a percentage of that going to housing?
Yes, that was part of the governor's budget,
Hmm.
an increase in the conveyance tax, I think over 800,000.
Yeah.
Specifically for housing. There either has been or will be a similar bill introduced that also takes that conveyance tax over a certain threshold and returns that to the communities. Again, I don't believe that's been introduced yet, but I do anticipate that it may come as a counter to what the governor has proposed.
And that was the question I had, because it'd be, that'd be fine if a part of it comes back to the cities and towns. Yeah,
Yep. So if that comes through, I'll certainly let you know.
thank you.
In terms of property tax relief, Middletown does have legislation. I think I've described this before. They had not submitted by the end of Friday, and everyone's away this week. But we expect it shortly. And I did ask James and Nick to review that resolution and their proposed language that deals with owner occupied and non-owner occupied residential tax rates. So this is the umbrella that says if you rent out your house, apartment on a year-round basis to a qualified resident, as we've defined it, that property could be taxed at the residential tax rate.
Gotcha.
So this is in lieu of the homestead exemption. They do agree that that language would work for us. So my intention would be to bring a resolution to the council at our next meeting.
Great.
To move that ahead.
Thank you.
It does not deal with 513s. And
Right.
I think at the moment that's going to have to sit on the shelf for a little bit, given some of the land use changes to ADUs.
Yeah.
We need to do some clarifying and cleanup on our ordinances before we can then leverage it into a tax benefit for 513.
Yep.
So that's going to take a little more time.
That makes sense.
So that is property tax relief. Landing fee, there seemed to be some consensus, as you described, Keith, to move forward on that. We had talked about a couple different aspects. So clarification from the council about which of those to pursue and which most aggressively would be helpful. The three things that were on the table last time were rates, whether we wanted to increase that landing fee.
Hey, James, I think you should mute.
Oh, sorry.
And if there were an interest in a change, what would that be to? The second item that was put on the table was whether an exemption for residents should be included. That, if we wanted to pursue it further, I think needs a lot more work on whether it is possible and legal. It's more complex than just the rate change. And then these are sort of in a hierarchy, obviously. The last one was a passenger car landing fee. Again, I think that is more challenging. And if the group wanted to pursue that, we need some time to study it more thoroughly. So some feedback on those and the topic in general would be helpful.
Well, I'm supportive of the idea of doing a landing fee for human beings and cars. I
Keith,
think-
I'm gonna.
Yeah, sorry, of course, Bill.
Abstain.
Yeah. And again, as I think I said the other night, I mean, I'm perfectly fine if there's a requirement that the landing fee be dedicated to particular public safety, environmental conservation type housing, et cetera.
Well, I was going to say, Keith, by statute, there is already a definition.
Yeah, I'm saying, I'm okay. I'm not saying, Katie bar the door or children. So, yes, I would, I support both
Okay.
of those.
Just for everyone's benefit who may not have read it recently, because I had to pull it out as well. All fees less expenses of collection shall be utilized by the town of New Shoreham to promote the health, safety, and welfare of all passengers, including but not limited to emergency medical services, acquisition of property to support tourism-related activities, construct and maintain tourism support facilities, and to establish a fund to assist the town of New Shoreham in resolving problems which may arise due to growth in the tourism industry.
So you feel like that gives us runway, for example, to spend it on, well, there's enough room in our budget that
We have demonstrated over the
Yes,
years that
okay,
we
thank you.
spend far
Sorry.
in excess of what
that's
we
all.
currently
Yep,
collect.
yeah, absolutely. So I said $5. I think that's a little extreme. But you know, a boy can dream. But you know, I would be really interested in some strategic advice on this, because otherwise I feel like I'm negotiating against myself. If I say, well, you know, 5 seems high, how about 250? You know, I mean, I don't know. It seems to me that we actually have a pretty good case to articulate, that it's not just saying, hey, would you increase the landing fee, but you know, the reasons why we need to and what the needs are. And when you overlap in the condition of our roads, I mean, I'd love to go up there with Mike Shea sometime and talk about what gigantic cars are doing to our roads and culverts. So I don't really feel prepared to say it should be X until, you know, the 5 of us, 4 of us in this case, have a conversation with Alana and Tina and Rick and Jeff and you to really sort of talk about, and frankly, talk strategy, because, you know, it may be that they say, you know what, put it in at 5, make your case, and that's the best way to get 3. You know, like I literally don't have any idea what the strategy should be, you know?
And I don't, you know, it's somewhere along the way, and James, you and you can probably check this out better than I certainly can at this point. There has always been a constitutionality issue involved. It was never litigated the first time around, because my understanding is there was kind of a mutual agreement. Interstate, which was really the target in the beginning, said they would collect the fee, which is of course a major issue. And in return, they would not press the constitutionality issue. I think if you add in an exemption for residents, we're gonna widen that constitutional issue and make it much worse. But I think we, you know, we don't want to lose the baby in the bathwater. So I think we also have some issues in tying the amounts to the needs, because we are, since this was started in, I think was it in the 90s? It was sometime in the 90s.
91 was the first year
91.
of collection.
Yeah. We have been getting, you know, the chunks of money for the hotel and meals taxes. So that combined with the landing fee is giving us yearly about $1 million. And it's, you know, it's kind of hard to pinpoint, if we're not dealing with cars, what the impact of a tourist on our roads is, and how much of a downside we're getting from tourism when we're also getting a benefit. But I think, you know, we need some feedback from our legal eagles on, and I think it'd be not a bad idea to get some sort of feedback from our legislators as to the feel that they have upstate.
I mean, I don't know if you've read that report, the tourism report on the invisible cost of tourism.
Yeah.
It had a lot of information about what a tourist costs us just by being here in terms of policing, bathrooms, um, medical, the trash, of course. And if they, right, so you've got to figure like people who go on vacation don't use a restroom any less times than they do at home, and therefore we're talking about a lot of water usage. We also have the issue that we have not discussed recently that is we're going to have to discuss, which is about the public bathrooms downtown and redoing them. Which is, we wouldn't need them if we didn't have tourists. If we didn't have people pouring off those ferries, they wouldn't be needing to go to the bathroom right there. Also, the idea of adding bathrooms like the ones we have at Mansion Beach to other locations on the island is directly related to tourism. Because the rest of us can drive home. So I think, the cost of policing are going up. So we do need to, and honestly, this should have been addressed several years ago, I think. Like, it's been stagnant for, how many years has it been this price? Like,
Since 1991.
Since 1991, since Beth.
since 91, right? So we're talking about, that's a really long time.
So Amy, are you looking for direction on these? Or are we still going to follow this? You kind of articulated it well, but we don't need to draw this focus in any smaller, do we?
I think for now,
From us.
I'm gonna say it back and you're gonna let me know, which is we're gonna come back with a little bit more robust of a presentation on some of the strategic rationale. We're gonna work with Nick and James on some of the constitutionality concerns and how that might play out from a legal perspective. And then I'm also going to bring back some of the impact of tourism items. In March, we are working on scheduling a meeting with the legislators and the lobbyists together. So I think we'll save that part of the strategy discussion for when they're here.
Okay,
But
great.
that's would be my plan.
Terrific.
With a secondary question about the passenger car and resident items.
It's an interesting enough idea that I want to
Okay.
explore it.
School funding?
Yes.
That's
Yes,
okay.
please.
And again, just more of an update. I did forward to the council some of the materials from the league sessions, which
Hey, Bill.
Come on back.
Bill.
shared with the council some of the materials from the league sessions on the school funding formula. As I said, those are very much right now about the current formula, understanding it, how it works, and making sure that these are my words, everyone in the state has a handle on it, as opposed to any plans for future changes. Alongside that, the Rhode Island Foundation has a Blue Ribbon Commission that is starting to study the funding formula in a more academic way. So I don't think we will see any material legislative proposals this year because that commission is still doing their work. And that's going to drive some of the bigger changes that we may be looking for.
So are we, if the Rhode Island Foundation is the lobbyable entity now, right now, can we ask Rick and Jeff to give us a sense of where we should go there?
I've
Because-
introduced that conversation with them and
Great.
they're going to bring back some feedback
Great.
about how to proceed and who to be
We might
talking
even want to
with.
have some of them out
So.
to talk about school funding.
And can they at the same time kind of track what the state might be proposing to fill in the missing federal funds that we know are coming on the school side of the ledger?
Mhm. Absolutely. The last one, the hotel tax, two bills have been introduced so far that expand that hotel tax to the whole house rental. We knew that that was coming. Both of those use the existing hotel distribution formula. So it carves it out to the community, to commerce, to the tourism councils. I do expect in the next week, when they return to session, that there will be the introduction of a bill that takes that 5% and distributes it directly back to the communities. And so if this group can be thinking about and prepared to act in our next few meetings about whether we want to actively support any of these bills, particularly when it comes to bringing some of that back to the community. As a reminder, the governor also proposed changing the hotel tax to expand it to whole house rentals, but that would all be diverted to homelessness and possibly housing. So it's not his proposal is not one that would likely return dollars back to Block Island. So we may want to take a position on that.
I don't know whether you saw it, but New Shoreham. How did they express this, Amy, in the League of Cities and Towns document? Go ahead.
Well, I only have one copy, but I
Okay.
will pass it down.
It's amazing compared to other towns, how many short-term rentals we have.
That page comes from the Short-Term Rental Commission, the Legislative Commission, and it's put together by Rhode Island Housing. Only 1% of the housing stock in Rhode Island are actually short-term rentals. In New Shoreham, 20% of the housing stock are short-term rentals. And when you look at some of the other communities we're the highest percentage in the state. When you look at the other communities that are also heavy in short-term rentals, that's where the dollars are going to be flowing out of, and not necessarily where they would be the beneficiaries of the programming that are
Fascinating.
going to support.
And they're all summer tourism communities.
Yeah.
That have the highest number. I mean, that's where it comes from.
It just made it really clear really quickly in a
Yeah.
nice visual.
Sometimes the visuals are.
And so it's another example where we are not little Block Island off on the side. We have a pretty big stake in this conversation if we wanted to assert it.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know how the rest of you feel, but the idea that, I don't like to keep nickel and diming everyone with different percentages and different taxes, but if that tax goes through,
If it's going to happen anyway.
then we want it.
Which seems inevitable.
I think that's well said. Yeah.
So I'll keep you updated on that as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
That was all I had on the legislative
Are
side.
we going to do financial reports? Is that one? Or?
Mona is busy working on the
Yeah,
budget, so she
yeah.
asked me to do the financial reports.
Oh, you want?
And I didn't have too much to report. January is obviously a pretty quiet
Anything
month.
giving you agita?
There are odds and ends.
Okay.
This Jensen Hughes municipal fire alarm
Oh.
Yeah.
deployment is starting to creep up, for something that wasn't budgeted and is partially handled by insurance. We've had some other expenses mandated by the State Fire Marshal's office. So we're trying to figure out how we can cover those.
Okay.
We're obviously anxious to get that system deployed. So that's an unexpected one that has come up. Some equipment in highways, again, unexpected failures where we've done some replacements. So far, we've been able to find homes for those expenses, but any more, any additional, and it's something we need to be paying closer attention to.
We could add an assessment onto the bodily fluids.
Describe bodily fluids.
But that was about it.
Great.
Legal would be the only other, which again, shouldn't be a surprise. It's something we know about and we've committed to pursuing some of these projects or cases, but we're at about 75% of budget for the year.
Okay.
So.
Do you want to do your report too?
Sure. And again, I'm not going to read the entirety, But I did want to call out the obligation for residents and businesses to clear their sidewalks. I don't know if that will come up again during the rest of the season, but they're sidewalks.
I don't know whether you're aware of this, Molly.
And then as well, the portal, this is not in the report, it happened subsequently. The portal for congressionally directed spending did open for fiscal year 26 applications. It wasn't clear that that would happen. It's a very short window. The due date is March 4th. And there's obviously a bit of uncertainty about whether those will actually proceed. I have a conversation scheduled with Rick and Jeff to discuss what might be a strategic application that we could actually deliver in that short window. So I just want to let you know that that was out there and it may come back quickly.
Thank you.
If we can find something to submit.
Okay. Paul, did you have anything that you wanted to include tonight? You're not on the agenda, but. Terrific.
Wait,
Good
can
night.
I just go back to the sidewalks since I, because I just want to ask you, don't you think that that's a problem? I feel like it's a problem that school children are walking in the street because the sidewalks aren't cleared. Right, and teachers, and then I had a lot of teachers talk to me after that about, you know, how they walk up and down the sidewalk. They live at the bottom of High Street and they're having to walk in the street. So.
And so as we said, there is an ordinance and an obligation on the part of property owners to take care of that. And during the budget process, the council will hear a proposal about an avenue where the town takes responsibility for that with a piece of equipment that we actually previously owned to clear sidewalks, but would need to be replaced. And so that becomes a funding and policy conversation as well.
I was going to say, at one
When did
time,
the
didn't
town
we,
stop doing it?
we used to have that little piece of equipment?
We did, and that has since failed. And so if we want to continue to do that, we need to replace it. And so that's a budget item.
And we used to charge the homeowner if we did it, especially on the main street. We did way back when.
I was going to say that would be before me, but
But I mean, in the meantime, we should enforce the ordinance.
in the meantime, that ordinance is on the books and it is the responsibility of the property owners to clear the sidewalks. Yes.
Or they get a fine of up to $100 if it's not cleared, right? Within, what did it say, like 4 hours after sunrise
After
or
sunrise or
something like that?
Yeah.
Noon.
I have a motion to adjourn.
I just want to add in at one point, because it was such, we've been pummeling the harbor side tonight. Their sidewalk was shoveled and it was one of the first ones and it surprised me.
That's true.
Yep. So,
I have a motion to adjourn.
second.
Favor? Aye.
I
What do I say?